Welcome to the Business Development Podcast, brought to you by the Global Business Development Association, delivering the strategies and tactics to boost your career and corporate growth.
Hello, BD Pros, and welcome to the Global Business Development Association's podcast called What is Business Development? So today, let's face it, sales is often considered a dirty word. And what are the first thoughts that come to mind when you hear salesperson? Yeah, exactly. But why is this? Isn't selling really about guiding someone from a state of need and uncertainty to one of peace and fulfillment? Well, today, folks, we're going to talk about the book Sales is Therapy with the two authors, Jack Frimston and Zac Thompson. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the book. Look, it reveals the deeper, more human side of selling, where each interaction becomes more than just a chase for commission. Selling transforms from a mere transaction into an opportunity for connection, where understanding another's needs, fears, and desires becomes a true art. This approach offers a grounded way to sell, leading to more consistent and predictable results that actually work. So, through a therapeutic lens, you'll learn that empathy, not persuasion, is the key to building lasting trust. Folks, trust, that's chapter number 1 in the business development body of knowledge. It's all about trust. You can't do any deal without an element of trust. And that's why throughout the BD Bach, we emphasize that trust is the foundation to all business development. And so with this book, you'll understand that selling is no longer just an exchange, but a dialogue, an honest search for mutual value. In these moments of connection, both the seller and client are invited to step beyond the surface into something more meaningful. And that meaningful engagement and the wonderful book called Sales is Therapy is authored by Jack Frimston. And let me tell you about Jack and his co-author, Zac Thompson. Both of them are directors at a sales consultancy. And at Sales Consultancy, their mission is to empower businesses to unlock their full sales potential and achieve consistent, predictable, and sustainable growth. And they're also co-directors at We Have a Meeting. And We Have a Meeting is also a consultancy. And also, We Have a Meeting has a podcast. And they are co-hosts of that podcast. But today they're on our podcast. We're extremely privileged to have them here today. So Jack and Zac, welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us. Good
Thanks
to see you, Tony.
Yeah, great to have you. And, guys, I always like to ask our authors when they join us, hey, how did you get into the business development field? So Jack, let's start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, my first ever job was doing exactly what We Have a Meeting do as an agency now, but there was a local call center. I was 16 years old. One of my friends was working there. He got me in, and I was calling around local businesses, plumbers, cafes, saying, do you want to advertise at the local football ground? And I was just trying to book appointments, and I was bloody awful. But that was where I got my taste of rejection and validation for the first time.
That's great. I love that origin story. What about you, Zac?
Well, my first sales job was the same as Jack's, believe it or not, but I just didn't have the same success. Jack is a much more lovable rogue than I am, and I was too busy wanting to be a rock star, I think, at the time to take it seriously. But then I went to university, tried to pursue music, and when I left university, who was hiring? Sales is always hiring. People aren't looking for a rock star. So I ended up in a sales job, which became probably a reluctant career, but something that I'm sure we'll talk about how it became something that we're hopefully looking to kind of redefine with some of the stuff in the book.
Okay, great. Well, so for you two rock stars, how did you guys get together and form this band?
We've been friends since we were 15 years old, so we've been friends for quite a long time now. We've lived together before. We've done all the things that growing boys and men will do together in our lives, and through that, learned that we could probably trust each other when starting a business. So that's the origin story, and we're still friends now, believe it or not.
Wow, I love this. So, folks, this is the first time I'm interviewing two people at the same time, let alone two childhood friends that grew up and now are in business together and doing great things for the business development community. So, this is so fantastic. Now, guys, let's talk about your book too. What drove you to write the book, and what compelled you to focus on this title, that sales is therapy?
So we have, as we've started growing WAM and running WAM, we found that we don't like the way that salespeople are portrayed. It's very pushy, it's very like needy, it's very beggy. And when I joined Zach in the business, it was, we're going to do things a little bit differently. And I've actually taken all these different tactics and methodology from other salespeople or negotiators, and then we found that actually the best sales tactics come from therapists, because a therapist is never trying to push a package down your throat. They're trying to find out what's going on in your world, what problems are you struggling with, and how motivated are you to solve those problems. Now, me and Zach, we come up with our own ideas and ideas that we love, and we thought we need it in one place, one piece of IP where we can say that's our Bible, just follow that, and that will be okay. And I remember Zach texted me one day and said, I have an idea for a talk. We should call the talk Sales is Therapy, because that's what sales genuinely is. And little did we know that we were thinking of the title of our first book.
Yeah, I like that. And, you quote Socrates in your book, where Socrates said, "You cannot persuade anyone of anything. You can only make them think." And I like what you said, Jack, about the whole concept of, um, this therapist model, and assuming that persona as a business developer to understand the underlying problems, but more importantly, focusing on the motivations. Um, and so I think that's very striking. And I also like the analogy you used of when you open the book talking about, imagine if you walked into a therapist's office and they showed you a PowerPoint presentation about all of their excellent credentials and their 10-point process for evaluating your psychosis, and then all of the wonderful proof points that they have with previous patients that they've helped succeed. That would not be the type of therapist that I think a lot of folks would like to walk into. So, let's pull the thread a little bit on that therapist model, and so if you could kind of walk folks through the overarching concept of the book.
Yeah, so the overarching concept, you actually hit on a really good point then, which is probably the basis of a lot of what we talk about. So Socrates, the great ancient Greek philosopher who founded the Socratic method, inspired the Stoics, all that good stuff. He basically had this idea that you can't persuade anyone of anything, you can only make them think. So politicians, statesmen, all sorts of people would go to visit Socrates and say, here's a belief that I have, unpick that belief for me. And he would drive people crazy because he would never answer a question. He would just, through asking questions, get them to unpick this belief. And that's been then popularized and reformed again in modern times with CBT therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. So using that same framework that someone might use to unlock past trauma or perhaps drug and alcohol dependency, people might know surface level there is a problem here, but getting to that root cause of the problem and the motivation to fix it, the why do you want to fix it, is often an overlooked thing in sales. So if you imagine sales in a therapy setting would probably be someone saying to you, you have a problem, here's my $997 a month course to fix that for you. They very rarely go, well, why do you want to fix the problem? Why don't you stick with how things are at the minute? What's brought you here today? What have you looked at so far? Why has that not worked? They rarely do all the questioning that a therapist would. But in doing so, what you tend to uncover is all the reasons why someone should fix something without really having to put any pressure on them at all. So we wanted to write a book that uncovers that, amongst other things, in a very, very practical way that you can follow, and hopefully you can kind of skim through and pick things up and try things out in a very practical way.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Zach, because that's really what resonated with me in reading the book. Everybody's busy, especially business developers. We just want to get to the, give me the answers to the quiz. Okay. And so that you've made this book very approachable. I really like the format, the writing style. I'll give you a good example. It's where you kind of compare the traditional salesperson and the therapeutic salesperson. And just even, the initial cold call, you do kind of a cold call breakdown, and assuming both of those positions, if it's okay with you guys, I'd just like to run through the first couple, call opening and problem exploration. Again, the typical format for a cold call. Is that okay if I do that? I'll just rewrite from the book.
Of course. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, great. Because I think it's a perfect example of how you've made this book so accessible to people. So, okay, when you do the cold call, ring, ring, okay, the prospect picks up. The traditional salesperson will say, "Hi there, I'm John from XYZ Solutions. We help companies like yours improve your sales performance by 35%. Do you have 5 minutes?" Okay, that's the typical script. Now, on the other end, the therapeutic salesperson, it's, "Hey, John, I'll be honest, we don't know each other. Can I explain briefly why I've called? And if it's not, something you're interested, I'll never bother you again." Okay. So clearly a striking contrast from the traditional script. And then moving into the problem exploration, assuming that they don't hang up on you, the traditional salesperson will say, "Our research shows that most companies in your industry struggle with lead generation. Is that something you're facing too?" Okay. Now, the next is the therapeutic salesperson. And so, as you recommend in your book, the therapeutic salesperson would say, "Hey, I imagine everything's running perfectly with your sales process, and and you can't think of one area that you'd like to improve. Is there anything that you would like to improve?" Okay, so clearly there's a difference where you're in the therapeutic salesperson mode. You're kind of pulling that thread. You're drawing them into the conversation, and you, as the therapeutic salesperson, are really just trying to learn. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Like, how can we bring in that therapeutic? One of the chapters in the book is talking about if somebody was suicidal on a bridge, you wouldn't apply those typical business development tactics that you see in so many organizations. It's let's treat people like human, and let's ask thought-provoking questions. Like, the better the question, the more you're going to get out of the answer. So if you want better answers, ask better questions.
Yeah, I like that. And so perfect segue into the rest of the book. What I'd like to hear from both of you gentlemen is, what are the top 3 takeaways you would like folks to learn from the book?
Shall I go first, or Jack, would you like to?
You go first. You give one, I'll give one, and then maybe we'll come up with one together.
Oh, so we're going to go back and forth like that. I'll go one. Oh, nice.
Let's
like
do that.
I think one of the overarching things is sales. I don't know if it's the same across the pond, but sales over here is one of those things that people tend to fall into after education and probably feel a little bit embarrassed to tell their family they do at the family barbecue. So they'll say, like, I'm in business development or client relations or something like that. Sales, rightly at the top, Tony, you said it's a dirty word. And I think through the practice in this book, I'd like people to take away, there's an ethical way to do things where you probably feel like you don't need to have a shower at the end of every day to get the smell of it off you. So that'd be my first one. Jack?
I think that one of the big pieces of information or advice would be, When you go into sales, you have to make peace with your inner child. We talk about this in the book, but your relationship with validation and rejection. You'll be bringing a lot of skeletons to work, your inner child, all of these different things will come up when people say things to you, you don't realize, but it'll be triggering parts of your personality of why you don't want to be rejected or why you've got different attachment styles, etc., etc. So can you make peace with what you are doing? Remember, you've just got to be indifferent. It's not that they're rejecting you or the idea of you. You are just a vessel, and when you sign the dotted line and accept a job in sales, that will be guaranteed rejection. So of course I have to go through 95% rejection in order to get the wins. This is just the flow of what I need to go to. The third one me and Zach are going to do. Go on, Tony. Sorry.
Well, I was hoping to pause right there and we can unpack those two. Is that okay?
Yeah, please unpack
And
it.
then we'll finish with the grand finale of number 3. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. And I really like the fact, obviously you guys have known each other for a long time. And so it definitely shows in how you collaborate just even in real time, because I think what's great is you picked 2 key topics. You know, Zach, you talk about this concept of really the embarrassment that some people may feel entering into sales. And I think some people think that, oh, well, let's just call it business development because nobody knows what that is. And so it's not as slimy as sales. Where in actuality, there is a distinct difference between business development and sales. Sales is a very highly specialized field, demands a lot of training, and it really occurs during the conversion phase where you have a prospect that raises their hand and says, I'm ready to buy. Okay, that's where the salesperson steps in and converts that prospect into a client as quickly, effectively, and efficiently as possible. Whereas the business development element, you can be a business developer and still do sales. You can be a salesperson and still do business development, but business development really starts to occur after the awareness phase where marketing catches a prospect's attention. They're not really problem aware right now, but when they do become problem aware, they do start to seek solutions. That's when they enter into the activation phase. So, and I like what you said, Zach, that it's really kind of a frame of mind of, first of all, business development and sales are very noble professions. Hopefully, discussions like this help continue to promote the profession as something that's very noble when you have the right frame of mind. And I think what you said, Zach, is some people in our profession have a tendency to use tactics that you feel like you have to take a shower at the end of the day when you've been subjected to those tactics. That's typically neuro-linguistic programming tactics. These were kind of popular in the 60s and the 70s, and it was all kind of these manipulative tactics to kind of force conversion quickly. Think the Boiler Room movie. Think Wolf of Wall Street. The whole objective is to be transactional. And hey, if you're fraudulent in the meantime, no big deal. You hit your numbers. Well, that's not what we do. Okay. And I like how you focus, Zach, on emphasizing that key piece that's not what we do as professionals. What we do is we're here to help people. I always tell people business developers are like lifeguards. My job is to help save lives. Okay. I'm not going to run around the beach blindly, just trying to pull people out of the water who aren't even in the water. Right. I mean, this is ridiculous. No, my mission is to find those that are in need, dire need, and get to them as quickly as possible. And when I get to them, if they don't want to come with me, I am not the cops. I can't force you to come with me. Okay. I can offer you the life ring. Grab it, don't grab it. Makes no difference to me. Okay. And so I really like what you said there, Zach. And then Jack, you just rolled right into the second key element of all this, which is, we assuming that therapeutic mindset as a business developer and getting to the root of the problem and asking those thought-provoking questions, not even solutions. It's premature to roll right into offering solutions when you don't even know what the prospect's problem is, and then how to really tease out that problem set so that it's expressed in their own words. And I'd also, Jack, since you brought up that concept, I know there's one thing in the book where you talk about the IKEA concept, if I recall correctly. Can you elaborate a little bit about that? Because I think it really keys into. I've also liked the fact that you guys are talking about psychological situations where people are really in dire situations, and oftentimes they're in a state of rejection or denial, and so walk me through that tactic a little bit, because I think that's a key component here, right?
Okay, yeah, good. So the IKEA curve. If you've got an idea and I've got an idea, what do you prefer? Swedish furniture, right? Okay, I know you're always going to prefer your idea. So the reason it's called IKEA is when you've made that little table that you put your coffee in, and it's wonky and it wobbles, and you have to put a piece of cardboard under it. But you look at it and you think, yeah, I did that. I made that. I was part of that. You value it more because you were involved with the process. You built it. So what we like to do in sales is, rather than me running in there with my solution saying, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a square in a round hole, you build the solution. So you're involved in the process. What would you want it to look like? Tell me what you'd want to see. What would your expectations be? The happiness equations is where expectations meet reality. So can we get that out of you so that you build it yourself, so you feel like you've been a part of it? That way you value it more and you're more likely to stick it out to make it work. Obviously, everybody's focusing on selling. One of the big things as well is like retaining. You want to keep your clients. You want to retain customers, and you want them. If you're selling a piece of software, you don't want them to just say, "Oh, we've got that now. We're actually not going to use it." Like, get them bought in. That is like the selling doesn't stop.
Oh, wow. I love that. The selling does not stop. It's true. That's business development. It's full cycle business development. So oftentimes I've seen that companies will bring their business development teams and sales teams to bear. They'll win the deal and then they disappear. They won't even let the business developers near the client until, of course, the client has a contract renewal, and then they bring the BD folks and the sales team back in frantically to say, okay, keep them, win them. What do you mean you want me to do that? I haven't even been involved with them since we closed them. And now you want me to create magic. There were all these problems along the way, not to mention you missed a couple of upsell opportunities too. And so I like this concept where the business developer is intimately involved throughout the customer life cycle and helping build the solution together, which empowers the client, and the client has buy-in to the overall solution and the product, and pride, really, in a lot of ways. So I like that point. Okay, guys, a few minutes left on the clock. Can we? What's the number 3 top takeaway from the book?
So me and Zach, we have this thing that we do, and it's keeping with the IKEA theme. We're going to build it ourselves. So rather than me coming up with what my favorite one is, what we're going to do, and we do this a lot, Tony, so let's see if we can perform it today. I'm going to say a word, then Zach's going to say a word, then I'm going to say a word. We're going to go back and forth to see if we can create the third BD takeaway. So I'm going to start, Zach, and it's just going to go straight into you. You ready for this? We've done this quite a lot, and it works quite well.
Yeah.
Okay. The
most
effective
way
of
speaking
to
a
prospect
is
by
doing
the
hard
work. The most effective way, Tony, of speaking to a prospect is by doing the hard work. And by that, what we mean is, we don't mean by doing research, but we mean by listening. Okay? The hard work is actually listening. People run in and they want to talk, they want to do the work, but really the hard work begins at home, and that is by listening to what they are saying. And there are levels to listening that we talk about in the book, but listening, can you just shut your mouth? You're given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Can you stop talking and just listen?
Okay, well, guys, as you were ad-libbing there, I could not shut my mouth. I was laughing so hard I had to shut off my mic. so that so that the audience can hear what you guys have to say. So do the hard work. And the hard work is listening, right? That can be so difficult because as a business developer, you see the opportunity to talk, and you want to jump in with that solution. You want to jump in and provide that wisdom. Maybe you want to jump in and try and go for the close. But there's so much magic in that space, that empty space where you just shut up and you listen. Maybe mute your mic so you can laugh out loud.
Yeah.
But so Jack, you mentioned these three methods of questioning. Can you elaborate a little bit on those?
The question or the listening, the three levels.
I'm sorry, the listening.
Yeah, the listening. So the first one is, are you listening and just like waiting for your turn to talk? Okay. Which is what most people, I meet somebody for the first time and they say, where are you from? I say, I'm from Australia. And they go, oh, I've been to Australia. What part are you from? So you're responding because you're waiting for your turn to talk. The other one is a lot deeper. So you're listening on a deeper level, to listening to what you're saying, the words, you're trying to feel them. You're not just necessarily trying to problem solve, but you're trying to make them feel heard as well. The third level is where you are listening to what's not being said. So what are they not saying? Obviously, we have body language. Great. What does, when you walk in a room sometimes and there's a vibe, like you're listening to everything. They say things like, it's kind of effective. So you're listening to everything and you're really, really taking in every word. You're not thinking about what you're going to say next. You're just being present in that conversation. And you know that if you're listening, you don't need to prove that you're listening by going, okay, yeah. You can just say, okay, you've said something. Let me stop and think now. Where do I want to go with that? That's true listening.
Mm-hmm.
Most people live between 1 and 2.
Yeah, I like that. Zach, what were you not saying?
What was I not saying?
Yeah.
Do you know where my mind goes with this? If I want to give people another little bonus tip to take away when we're talking about doing the hard part. Often, what comes up when we're doing that deeper listening is probably a question that we want to ask, but we're not sure how to ask it, right? Which kind of what Jack was alluding to then. And we like this idea of asking permission to ask the tougher questions. And I think if people are looking for a real takeaway that they can implement straight away, if we were going to ask someone a tough question just before we booked a meeting, we might say something like, Jack, can I ask you a really tough question before I let you go? Jack will say, yeah, but he'll probably lean in a little bit because I've asked him, like, yeah, go on. I'll say, is there any way you've given up on fixing this problem? And Jack's going to say, no, of course not. No, I need to find a way to fix this. And it allows him to kind of vent. Being a leader of a business is probably a very lonely place for people. So he's going to vent because of that. But that is a classic example of, I've heard that I should probably ask a tough question, but have I got the tools in the toolbox to ask it? So I would implore people to try that. Ask permission first before asking the tough question. You might be shocked with the results.
Wow. I love it. Okay, guys. Let me summarize the top 3 takeaways. Please correct me if I say something that is not proper, but the top takeaway from Zach was, hey, you're in sales, you're in business development, embrace it, be proud of it. You may have fallen into the profession because it's the only thing you had available, or you wanted to transition out of your rock star stage and roll right into something that pays the bills consistently. Great. You're in a wonderful, noble profession. Embrace it. And then second is confront your inner child. That was from Jack, which is, be prepared for rejection. Don't be dependent upon validation. You're in a profession that is designed to help people, not manipulate people. Okay. That's the negative perception I think Zach alluded to. You're not using sleazy tricks, mind tricks to trick people. You're engaging in a discussion so that you can help them. And then finally, the third takeaway was do the hard work. And the hard work is often shutting up and listening, being an active listener, and those 3 different ways of listening. Don't listen to provide an answer. Don't listen and try to recall one of the 20 or 30 responses to the objection. No, just ask those questions like Socrates to get those profound reasons why it's a problem, and do they have the motivation to fix it? And sometimes you just need to lean in and ask them, hey, I have got a really tough question for you. Have you given up? Or is there something more here? I think there's a lot more in this fantastic book that you two have written. Folks, again, it's called Sales is Therapy. It's available on Amazon, 5-star rating on Amazon, 5-star rating from me. I love the book. You guys need to get it. Jack and Zach, gentlemen, how can folks follow your work, get in touch with you? What's the best way to do that?
Just find us on LinkedIn, baby. We're on all social media, but Jack Frimston, Zac Thompson, we have a meeting and we can have a meeting.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I follow your work on LinkedIn. I love the fun posts that you guys have. Life is fun. Enjoy it. And I think, Jack, you always say, remember, you'll eventually die. So embrace the world, embrace life, have fun with it, and do it with your childhood friend if you can, and really make a difference in the world. So to you two gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today and everything you're doing for our profession.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Respect.
Thank you for listening to the Business Development Podcast. Join our free community of corporate partners and business development professionals advancing the art, science, and ethics of the business development profession at gbdassociation.org.